Namaskara to one and all. Namaste, Sharada Mata, Kashmira Vasini. Sharada Desha, the land of speech, as Kashmir was popularly known long ago, had cultural links with Kangra, Chamba, Kulu, and Spiti at one end, and Takshashila, Gandhara, and Kabul Valley at the other, today stands isolated. Acharya Abhinava Gupta, Kshemendra, Bilhana, Kalhana, and Panini made Kashmira the cradle of Sanskrit lore and learning. The land that for centuries had welcomed and sheltered scholars, mystics, conquerors, missionaries, atheists, and warriors allowed them to profess and practice their ideas and beliefs, today has no place for its original inhabitants anymore. They remain with scarred memories. How this transformation came about, what it is to be a Kashmiri Pandit now, and engaged in carving out a new identity for themselves, will be deliberated by our guest speaker today, Mr. Vinod Koul. We at Destination Heritage take pride that our webinars are thoughtfully curated and bring a listener's experience of the highest order. In the many webinars being held today, I did not find any talk on heritage photography or the Kashmiri issue, and it is the first of its kind which is brought to you by Destination Heritage. A technocrat, a corporate executive, a businessman who is now a student of Indic civilization and its philosophical foundations, in short, of Indology, is how Mr. Vinod Paul described himself when I asked him for his profile. He admires the country's glorious heritage to invest all his free time in his pursuit. Soft spoken, Vinod is a board member at Doodleberg Marketing and Communications Private Limited and board member at Process Hospitality Private Limited, besides being a trustee of Lotus and Chrysanthemum Trust, Bengaluru. He is a consultant with NAC, a UGC program with the Government of India for university ranking framework. He has mentored several startups for strategic and operational issues. He had steered a bioinformatics company as its CEO, winning several innovation awards. Prior to this, he was the COO of 5 business units at Satyam Computer Services Limited. Before shifting base to Bengaluru in the 90s, he co-founded an IT services company in the US. So the platform is all yours, Mr. Vinod Paul, for the next 1 hour. And a very warm welcome to you on the Destination Heritage platform. We are all eagerly looking forward. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Geeta ji, for a generous introduction. I will probably have to do a lot more work to live up to the kind of introduction that you've given. But anyway, thank you so much. Upfront, I want to tell you that I've been living in Bangalore for about 30 years now. And so far, nobody has asked me to talk about the experiences of Kashmir, what happened to Kashmiris, what happened to our families. So in that sense, I feel that, this is a wonderful opportunity that you've given to me to actually talk about what actually happened in those times, the turbulent times of Kashmir. It kind of made me wonder for many years that even my close friends, other than a cursory inquiry about what happened, nobody was keen or interested to know actually the kind of genocide that was perpetrated in Kashmir. Even mainstream media for a long time ignored it. I think only now, there are snippets of little talks going about Kashmir, the Hindu genocide and stuff like that. If I've seen in the last couple of decades, even a small incident involving a specific community, it gets so much of media coverage and which is followed by an outrage and even judicial activism and action for justice, even though it really might be just a personal rivalry or a private dispute. But the forced eviction involving the ethnic cleansing of Kashmiri Hindus as a community, it really got no media coverage. No protests, no outrage, no judicial activism. Anyway, it's a sad story of unbridled violence, rapes, murders, and I still wonder how come not even a single human rights activist, the vocal of human rights activists, conscience was shaken. So anyway, I would again like to thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about Kashmir, and I would take it through a presentation that I've prepared for this. So also I want to just mention that some of the pictures are that I have taken, but some also have taken from the web. So anyway, let's get on to the presentation then. So this is a picture of Kashmir, one of the beautiful, it's near Pahalgam. Pahalgam is a beautiful hill station on the outskirts of Kashmir. Anyway, let me go to the next slide. Many times,
Because
can you hear me?
yes, carry on, Vinod, you are audible.
Yeah. Okay. So, many times I hear people say, what is a big deal, since most of the Kashmiri Hindus are quite settled now around the world? What is a big deal about giving up this land if, the other community, the Muslims, want it so badly? That's why I thought I will, set a little bit of context and as to why it's a big deal. So here is what I thought would be a good flow to talk about Sharada Desha in brief, from its very beginning and then traversing down the timeline, covering various stages of our civilization. So I've divided this talk into 6 parts. Ancient history of Kashmir. What is the significance of Kashmir which is important for our civilization? What are some of great contributions that Kashmir has done to the Indic civilization? Then comes the decline of the civilization due to the Islamic invasions. Then mistakes done by our leaders during the partition time. And finally, post-partition scenario and our, religio-ethnic cleansing. So typically, one of the first places when you want to look at antiquity of a religion or a region, is to look if there existed a calendar. Because calendar gives you a good idea about the timeline and also a fair idea of the civilizational advances of that region. In Kashmir, we call Panchang as Janthari. Janthari is the local name for Panchanga or a calendar that we follow in Kashmir. The Janthari that we use even now for finding out dates of our important festivals, inauspicious timings, for commencing certain activities, is 5,096 years in continuum. It is based on Saptarishi Samvat, like you have Vikrami Samvat, you have Shaka Samvat, and so on. So Kashmiri Hindus have been living in the same place for at least last 5,000 odd years until the genocide that happened about 30 years back. Nilmat Purana is one of the ancient scriptures that is solely dedicated to the Kashmir region. It talks about its origins, its people, its kings, its geography, its customs, its festivals, its important places, and so on. Like many other scriptures in India, Nilmat Purana also starts with a dialogue, and the dialogue is between Rishi Vaishampayana and Maharaja Janmejaya. Maharaja Janmejaya was the great grandson of Arjuna. Arjuna's son was Abhimanyu, Abhimanyu's son was Parikshit, and Parikshit's son was Janmejaya. So Raja Janmejaya asked Maharshi Vaishampayana, as to why Kashmir kingdom did not participate in the Mahabharata war. Maharshi responds by saying that because at the time of Mahabharata war, the king was a minor. Janmaya asks, and why was it so? The Maharshi tells him that Gonanda I, the king of Kashmir, was contemporary of Krishna, Balrama, and the other kings, including Jarasandha, Pandavas, Kauravas, and so on. Gonanda was also a relative of Kamsa. Kamsa was, Krishna's uncle. So after Kamsa is killed by Krishna, Jarasandha, another relative of theirs, tells Gonanda that he should avenge the death of Kamsa by killing Krishna. Heeding to Jarasandha's advice, Gonanda goes to Mathura and challenges Krishna for the battle. But Balrama being there, Balrama intervenes and tells Gonanda that before you can challenge Krishna, you should fight me. So in the battle that ensues between them, Gonanda is killed, and with the result, his brother Damodara ascends the throne of Kashmir. Few years later, Krishna decides to participate in the Swayamvara of Satyabhama, who was from the Gandhara region. And Gandhara was a Janpath on the fringes of Kashmir. And Krishna had to pass through Kashmir to reach there. Learning about this, Damodara thinks that this is a good time to avenge the death of his brother, and therefore intercepts Krishna while he's passing through Kashmir. In spite of many warnings by Krishna, Damodara is keen to take on Krishna to avenge the death of his brother. Again, a battle takes place, and Krishna kills Damodara in this battle. So after having killed Damodara, the other kings and nobles tell Krishna that he should now merge the Kashmir kingdom with his own kingdom as its rightful ruler. Now Kashmir has become kingless after Damodara and Gonanda, because none of them had any children at that point of time. To which Krishna says to them, no, Yashomati, the wife of Damodara, is actually carrying a child in her womb, and he is the rightful heir to the throne of Kashmir. He also adds that battles are fought for upholding principles, dharma, and not because one covets others' land and wealth. So Krishna goes to Kashmir and anoints Yashomati to the throne. Probably as an aside, this might be the first instance of a woman empowerment in the world, wherein a woman is made the head of a kingdom with an absolute authority to rule and administer her people. So a few months down the line, Yashomati delivers a son who was named Gonanda Dvitiya, the two, and he becomes de facto king of Kashmir after Yashomati. So when the Mahabharata war took place, at that point of time, Gonanda too was still a juvenile, and hence both Kauravas and Pandavas decided not to invite him for the war, because they believed a juvenile will not be able to take a rightful decision to which side he would want to participate in. So the reason for telling this story was actually twofold. One was to establish the antiquity of Kashmir dating back to the Mahabharata time. And second was to showcase the ethics and high moral values that were followed by our ancestors thousands of years back. Raj Tarangini by Kalhana. I think that most of you would have already heard about Raj Tarangini by Kalhana. It's one of the most respected historical narratives in terms of its style and content, that even today it is given as an example to emulate for writing classical history by scholars across the world. It typically, the book spans about 4,000 plus years of kings and kingdoms of Kashmir in detail. So I will not talk much because I think most people know about this, and I will move on to the next slide. Basically, the region of 7 rivers, which is Sindhu, Bias, Satluj, Ravi, Jhelum, Chenab, and Saraswati. This was considered the region where Sapta Sindhu or Sindhu's Saraswati civilization flourished. I think among these only Saraswati has dried up. Rest are still flowing, though some of them might have changed direction over the time, but they're still existing even today. So you see all these rivers, they either originate or pass through this region of Kashmir Mandala. And therefore this region was extremely fertile for the civilization to thrive. It is widely believed that the 4 Vedas were compiled in this region. There are several mentions of these rivers in Rig Veda, of course, using their ancient name. Vitasta was used for Jhelum. In fact, Kashmiri Hindus still call Vitasta for Jhelum. Then you had Shatudri and Airavati and others which were used and which were extensively used in Vedas, the Rig Veda especially. The oldest learning centers in the world belong to this region. I think you already talked about Taxila, but there was one more which was called Sharada Pitha. And if you know, in Taxila, more than 60 different subjects, I think 64 subjects were taught. They included Vedas, politics, logic, archery, philosophy, astronomy, music, and I think even commerce was taught in this university. And Sharada Pitha was where some of the best commentaries on Vedas were written. And this is where the foundation of Kashmir Shaivism was laid. I recall an incident that happened about 25 years back. I was in Uttarakhand. So I happened to visit an ashram, which was basically owned or run by an old, very, very old scholar. He was, I think, 90 years even then when I met him. He was not only just not just as astro, he was also an Ayurvedic doctor. So what he told me was interesting after he came to know that I was a Kashmiri. He said that I studied in Kashi, that must be in the early, part of the previous century. He said that on the convocation, they used to take 4 steps towards the direction of Kashmir, and which was basically signifying a desire to go for higher studies in Kashmir someday. So this was even when Sharada Pitha was totally destroyed by then. Sharada Pitha was destroyed way, way before, which I will come to a little later in the presentation. So Adi Shankara, one of the most respected of our seers and the rishis of the modern times, had visited Kashmir and spent time in Sharada Pitha. He was so enamored by the learning system that he established 4 pithas across India on similar lines as Sharada Pitha. And they're used primarily for the study of Vedas and Upanishads. Sharada, I think, Geeta-san already said that Sharada is the goddess of learning. And she's the presiding deity of Kashmir. I probably should have told this in the very beginning when I started the Sharada Desha presentation. But anyway, so that is the significance of Sharada in Kashmir. How many of you have heard about King Lalitaditya? At least I did not know about him till a few years back, because we weren't taught about him. Did you know that he was one of the greatest conquerors of Bharatvarsha and belonged to Karakota dynasty? I think Karakota dynasty was one of the longest dynasties that ruled large parts of Bharatvarsha. His kingdom had expanded from Kaveri Basin in south to Assam in the east, northeast, to Afghanistan and beyond to Caspian Sea in the west. And if you put together the kingdom of Ashoka and Akbar, his kingdom was even larger than Ashoka's and Akbar's kingdom put together. But unfortunately, we never learned about him in our history books. Apart from being a great soldier, he was also a great builder. I think many of you would have heard about this temple called Marthan Temple, which is dedicated to sun god, and is one of the best that.
Vinod, yes. 1 minute. Sorry to disturb you. There is a background disturbance coming from your end.
Oh, is that right? 1 sec. Can you shut Veena? Vijay, can you ask them to shut the? Sorry, I have just asked them to. Is it better now?
I think you carry on. Let us see.
Yeah. Okay. So
Some sort,
apart from,
some sort of a whistling sound.
even I'm hearing, but there is, I mean, there is no. I mean, it's running only on my laptop, so there can be no, what do you call, echo here.
Okay, continue then, Vinod. Continue.
Yeah, sorry. So apart from being a great soldier, he was also a great builder. Marthan Temple, dedicated to sun god, is one of the the best temples that have ever been built. Even the ruins of it are so magnificent that Steins is the one who translated Rajasthan more than 100 years back, says that looking at Marthan Temple standing tall, it surpasses all the best architectures of the world, be it Roman, Greek, or anything else. If you look at this picture in the background, the remnants of Marthan Temple are shown. Not only Marthan, Lalitaditya also built the city of Parhaspura, which was supposed to be the epitome of Kashmiri architecture. Now, of course, that also is in ruins today. You already spoke about Panini's Ashtadhyaya. It certainly is unsurpassed, and I think most or many grammarians across the world have borrowed from him to enhance the grammars of different languages or even create one afresh. Recently I read a paper published in it's a very reputed scientific journal. It's called Scientific America. In that, it basically concludes that Mendeleev borrowed the idea of periodic table from Panini, and the paper clearly established the conclusion. I don't think it is known to others that Mendeleev even called the missing elements which were not found till then as Ika, V, and 3. And this was based on the distance from the atomic mass of the unknown elements to those of that missing element. So it's a very fascinating read. Some of you interested may like to read it. It's available on the web. But in case if you're not able to find it, let me know. I can share the paper with you directly too. Patanjali Yoga Sutra, again, I think Gita-san told about it. It is the most popularized in the West as Hatha Yoga, which is just a minuscule of the various paths expounded in Yoga Sutra. In fact, the central point of Yoga Sutra, which is Yoga Chitta Vritti Nirodha, which basically means that ultimate goal of yoga is to annul or destroy the mentations of the mind. It is totally lost in the noise of physical exercise that they call yoga today. Somehow it's sad. But again, Maharshi Patanjali was a Kashmiri. Nati Shastra, it is said that if at all anything that can match in its profoundness to Vedas, it is only Bharata Muni's Nati Shastra. That's why sometimes it is also referred to as the fifth Veda. Sharangdev composed Sangeeta Ratnakara. It is the most authoritative treatise on Indian music and is considered as a guide by both Hindustani and Carnatic musicians alike. It talks about the nature of sound, the laya, the tala, the ragas, the nature of different musical instruments, the specific sounds that they produce. More importantly, Sharangdev also laid a huge emphasis on the audience. He writes that it's important for a composer to understand his audience, and playing to the audience is of utmost important, because he says the goal of music is meant, the music is meant to ensure that the audience is elevated to a higher level of consciousness. He also deals with the emotion of music and how and why certain ragas and instruments should be used in certain situations and during different timings of the day. Abhinav Gupta, I think the greatest scholar that we have heard in the recent few millennium, is a Kashmiri, and his book Abhinav Bharati is a must read for all aestheticians to understand the principles of rasa. I think it's one of the finest commentaries on Nati Shastra. By the way, Abhinav Gupta's most important work is not known as Abhinav Bharati. I mean, he had written about 46 brilliant such works, but he's most famously known for Tantra Loka, which is actually the foundational as well as the ultimate book to understand Kashmir Shaivism. The whole Shakta philosophy, the divine feminine principles is so profoundly expounded by Abhinav Gupta in Tantra Loka. The biggest travesty is that his works are taught in 80 universities around the world, but not even one, mind you, not even one in India. I move on to the next. So, continuing with the contributions, Charaka Samhita was written in Kashmir. It not only shows literary prominence of Kashmir, but also understanding of the functions of one's body, the effect of different doshas on the physical, mental, and emotional well-being of an individual. Ayurveda is supposed to be one of the best or epitome of personalized medicine, which Western allopathy, someday hopes will be able to provide. In fact, I read an article when I used to head a biotech firm, some years back. I read an article in Harvard which said that they were able to kind of correlate based on the Vata, Pitta, Kapha, the doshas. They were able to correlate, the genotype and phenotype of different individuals as well. So it is unfortunately, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's not very much practiced right now in India. But yeah, I think it's gaining popularity. Similarly, Mahayana Buddhism was born in Kashmir. It has a lot of influence from Kashmir Shaivism and Vedic thought. It is from here that Mahayana Buddhism spread to Tibet, China, Japan, and rest of the Central Asia, and it was taken by Kashmiri scholars who traveled to these places. It's also said that Nagarjuna, a great Buddhist scholar from South, came and lived in Kashmir, and this was part of his initial learning from here. And from here, he actually took it to the other parts of the world to spread Buddhism. It is prior to the 2 millenniums that some of the earliest Buddhist conferences of significance were also hosted in Kashmir, and wherein many scholars from across the globe participated, and it was patronized by the Kashmiri kings at that point of time. Yoga Vashishta. It is one of my personal favorites, and I think the greatest of Advaitic treatises ever. It is so simply, with very, very simple stories, it explains some of the most difficult and most complicated principles of Advaitic philosophy. I think this might be first such work that talks about multiverse and parallel universe, which actually the current day scientists are studying hard, and I think they're finding reason to believe that there is a multiverse, parallel universe. That is, this is still in the study. Kashmir has had a very rich tradition of storytelling, and Katha Sarit Saga by Somdar is also written in Kashmir. It is one of the best known treasure troves of stories ever to anyone. We have had several, like I think Geetaji mentioned about Kshemendra. Kshemendra had written Brihat Katha Manjari, which is also a brilliant book, but nothing surpasses the book that was written by Somadeva, Katha Sarita Sagar. So it actually draws from both the oral and the written traditions of Kashmir. In fact, if you see the picture behind, about an oral tradition I was telling you, this is a place, in Kashmiri we call it Tulmala, others call it Kheer Bhavani. The legend says it, goes by saying that when this goddess, Ragnya goddess, she actually originally used to live in Sri Lanka. That's where she was Sthapit. And when the sin in Sri Lanka became a little beyond, she felt suffocated basically, and she had requested Hanuman to take her. And this is, Hanuman brought her, and when she looked at this place, this is where she said she wants to. So this is actually a very, very significant. It's one of the 4 important shrines for Kashmiri Hindus. It's called Tulmula. And this comes from oral traditions. So that means Kashmir was even at the time of, if you go Yuga previous to Mahabharata, Kashmir was, its antiquity dates back to even that time. Moving on to the next. So if you look at the Sapt Sindhu region, it's basically a gateway to Central Asia, because if you had to go from anywhere from India to outside, you had to come into India. This was the route that you would follow. So it was basically an ancient land trade route for India with other nations, and it was also called as the Silk Route. So India used to be a very coveted land, as more than 1/3 of the global GDP belonged to India. So it's very natural for foreign invaders to try and plunder as much wealth from it, if possible. So Sindh, which is basically at the corner of it, because of its geographical location adjoining Afghanistan, was extremely vulnerable and bore the brunt of the most attacks from Arabs, Turks, Mongols, etc. So after the 635 AD and the formation of Islamic Caliphate, Sindh had repulsed more than 15 attacks from Arabs in the next 70 years, and each time inflicting a more humiliating defeat than the previous one. Then Muhammad bin Qasim under the Umayyad Caliphate came to conquer Sindh. But like the earlier times, this time too, initially Raja Dahir is the one who used to be, ruling the Sindh region of Kashmir at that point of time. So Raja Dahir's army inflicted heavy casualties on bin Qasim. So as he was looking very desperate and ready to escape, and he had almost run out of food for his army. But as luck would have it, he suddenly received a lot of help, including food, water, from some of the disgruntled nobles of Raja Dahir at the fringes of his own kingdom. And sometime before this attack took place, Raja Dahir had also given refuge to about 500 Muslims from Iraq who were being persecuted by bin Qasim's boss, the then governor of Iraq. His name was Hajjaj. So along with some of his own treacherous nobles and 500 odd Muslims who turned against Raja Dahir in the battle in the last moment, at the last minute, to support bin Qasim, Raja Dahir was killed, and hence Sindh fell to Arabs for the first time in 1712 AD. Basically, if you look at it, it's another tale of treacheries within and ungratefulness of those whom you had given refuge to. But it looks like some kind of a benevolence syndrome that you will see in future attacks on India, and probably it even continues to this day. So in the next 400 years, till Muhammad Ghazni finally conquered the other parts, Sapta Sindhu, this region was already converted, to Islam by about 60%. 60% of the people had already been converted. Yeah, even then, Kashmir Valley was still 100% Hindu, even at this point of time. So Shahmir was a young man from Swat region that was already under Islamic rule. By then, like as I said, I told you before that good parts of Sapta Sindhu had already been taken over by the Muslim invaders. So the Swat region had already was under the Muslim rule. So this young man Shahmir was actually conspiring to overthrow the then Sultan of Swat. And when the Sultan came to know about it, he ordered for his execution. So this Shahmir, to save his life, fled from there and came to Kashmir Valley asking for refuge. So he was the first person to come to Kashmir around 1315 AD. King Sadev was the ruler at that point of time, and in keeping with the Hindu ethos, decided to give him refuge, and not just refuge, shelter. He also patronized him by entertaining him in his courts. In a very short time, he got busy in planning palace intrigues, and with the help of another refugee by name Rinchen, uh, who also was given refuge by Sahadev. He plotted and got the king Sahadev killed in 1390. Kota Rani, his queen, that is Sahadev's queen, was a very, very sharp lady and a very brave one as well. She very early on had understood the designs of Shamir and wanted to keep him away from destroying Kashmir. So to protect Kashmir, she agreed to marry Rinchen, who ascended the throne after Sahadev. Then Shamir, again using the court intrigues and conspiracies, got Rinchen killed in 1323. And now Sahadev's younger brother, his name was Udyandev, was put on throne because he was more convenient choice for Shamir. So Kota Rani again married Udyandev. So basically, it was to make sure to ensure that the Kashmir was kept away from the Muslim rule. So she married Udyandev so that she can try and keep Kashmir united and also keep Kashmir away from the Muslim rule. So it's important to mention that Kota Rani was much respected and still had control over several courtiers because of her intelligence, and also she was a daughter of one of the bravest generals of Sahadev. His name was Ramachandra. He was no more. He had died defending Kashmir in some earlier battles. But she was extremely respected because of the lineage she came from as well. This was just to set the context of the Kota Rani and the importance of how she was central. She did everything that she could to save Kashmir at that point of time. But Shamir, with his utter cunningness, further plotted and had Udyandev too murdered. This happened in 1337-38. Immediately after that, Shamir asked Kota Rani to marry him. But Kota Rani refused. And in no time, being fully entrenched in the court with the connivance of other courtiers, he overthrew Kota Rani and ascended the throne of Kashmir in 1339 AD. Once he became the king, he ordered Kota Rani into his harem. And just before he could force himself on her, she committed suicide. And that was end of Hindu rule in Kashmir. Now, this is the start of the worst part of the atrocities for the Kashmiri Hindus. So, Shahmi dynasty actually ruled Kashmir for next 222 years. Among many tyrants in Shahmi dynasty, Sikandar Butchikan was the cruelest of them. He perpetuated so much of brutality against Hindus. They were given two choices: either convert or be ready to be killed. It is also said that during his time, the daily job of his soldiers was to wear the janus. The janus are the what you call the sacred threads that Hindus wear, and their job was to kind of wear these janus of the people who refused to convert to Islam. And it is said that those janus used to weigh in tons. So you can imagine how many Kashmiri Hindus were killed during just his own time. Another feature of his torture was that he made a place on the lake where the waters were very deep. He used to bring Hindus who had refused to convert, tie heavy stones to their legs and throw them in the lake. This place, is still, I recall it from of course, I didn't know the story of why this was called Batamazar at that point of time when I used to live in Kashmir. But the meaning of it is actually graveyard of Kashmiri Hindus. This is where he used to actually put them into the water and drown them by tying stones to their legs. The atrocities on Hindu girls and women are something that I don't think I even want to talk about. Also, his name itself signifies, Butchikan means basically the destroyer of murtis or vigrahas. So he said that the Martin temple was so strong, it was made of the best rock, that even after he tried so many times, he could not bring it down. So what he finally did was he dug a moat around the temple, brought in wood by felling thousands of acres of forest trees, and he put them to fire in this moat. It is said that the fire burned for months together. Even then, the temple stood strong and did not fall. But by the enormous heat of this fire, only some stones cracked. So eventually, he had to give up and he left it like that. He's responsible for destroying thousands of ancient temples of Kashmir, the Hindu temples. There is a place in Kashmir where there's currently a mosque, but it used to be a very, very important Devi temple in those days. And even today, I mean, if you see the wall of that from the mosque on the outside, has got the sindoor, the red color, that because even now people used to, even much after that, people would go there and pray because that was a very, very important Devi shrine for us. So, some of these are things that I'm able to recall right now when I remember the place. Another important thing to note was that even when Kashmir was ruled by Muslim kings for such a long time, Sanskrit continued to be its state language for many, many years, almost for 100 years after the first, even more than 100 years after the first ruler, that is Shamir, came to the throne. Kashmir, the Sanskrit used to be the state language. That is because Sanskrit was so deeply entrenched with the region and its people that invaders had to have it as the official language. I think it's only in 1450 that the language was changed to Persian. Anyway, after the Shami dynasty came the Chaks, then the Mughals, and then Pathans, and the atrocities continued on Kashmiri Hindus. So, because of constant murder, rapes, plunders of Hindus over these 500 odd years, there have been 6 mass exoduses of the Hindus from the valley to the various parts of India. I think you would have heard about Saraswat Brahmins in the Konkan belt. They're also one of the early migrants that had moved in the early centuries. There also have been migrations to other parts, they say in Bengal and some parts of Ujjain, various other places that, Kashmiri Hindus had migrated because of these atrocities over the previous 500 years. Finally, after Maharaja Ranjit Singh had, freed most of Sapta Sindhu region from Islamic rule, he's in fact, the last one he freed was Jammu and Kashmir, and that happened in 1820. Unfortunately, Kashmir Valley was the last to be liberated, and because of that, 70% of the population of Kashmir had already been converted to Muslims. But anyway, after the 500 odd years of the atrocities by Muslim tyrant rulers, Hindus finally got some reprieve under the rule of Maharaja Ranjit Singh. The British by then were quite comfortably entrenched in the rest of India. It is only after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh did the British dare to attack the kingdom of Jammu and Kashmir, because they were not sure if they will win against his brave army while he was still alive. Again, after his death, some disunity among the governors of Maharaja Ranjit Singh's empire, the British were able to win over, and Jammu and Kashmir also came under the British Empire. Another important aspect to note is that British ruled India was actually an East India Company enterprise, and that had to constantly give dividends to its shareholders back in England. So every year they had to raise money for the same. So after winning, the Jammu and Kashmir from the so many erstwhile governors, Maharajas of those region, British were left with almost no money because of constant fights and amount of money it takes for them to keep the army. So British wanted to actually sell the territory back to anyone who could buy it from them. So for that, which they asked for rupees 1 crore at that point of time, and yet they could retain the sovereignty of the kingdom unto themselves. So Maharaja Gulab Singh, who actually was a very able governor under Maharaja Ranjit Singh, somehow raised about 45 lakhs and offered it to British. So therefore, what British did was they cut some portions of the land, like Lahore, Spiti, and few other regions, and handed over the land to Maharaja Gulab Singh. It happened in 1846. The partition time. So when the time for British to leave India had come near, they wanted to inflict lasting wounds on India so that it dies a natural death as a republic in some time in the very near future. A logical question comes to mind as to why would they want to do that. Anyway, they had decided to leave India permanently, so why would they want to inflict such a betrayal on India? If you would have been following Churchill, Attlee, and almost all the British nobles of that time, they would say that India is a divided country full of uncivilized people. It's full of castes, creeds, languages, religions, and different cultures. It is only us who are able to unite them under the British rule. Others, they'll be busy killing each other. So to legitimize these brutalities at the 200-year-long British rule of India, they wanted to ensure that India does not progress and dies soon after they leave. So with this in mind, they devised a twofold strategy to achieve this objective. One was to have small portions, small kingdoms within the subcontinent to stay as independent kings, so that over a period of time, more states and territories call for independence and India as a sovereign republic fades. And secondly, the idea was to cut the trade route of India to Central Asia, and that passed through Gilgit. So for that, they wanted to hand over Jammu and Kashmir to Pakistan, thereby blocking India's economic progress, because if the trade route is gone, they will have to depend on other countries or through the maritime route, and which was a little difficult in those days too. So with these in mind, they thought that this will be good enough to create a failed state. So while drafting the India Independence Act, which was to be passed in the British Parliament in 1946, they co-opted Jinnah, and they made him, insist. They insisted that he ensure that the accession treaty has the clause that the decision of kings would be final and people's choice will not be asked. While the Indian National Congress was adamant that the accession should be based on the people's will, because India will be formed as a democratic republic and people's voice is supreme in democracy. But as usual, the British, with the help of Muslim League, prevailed, and the India Independence Act, the decision of king was made final and into the law. They knew that there were a few friendly kings among these 560 odd kings whom they could persuade to stay independent, and they also thought that they had a good equation with the Maharaja Hari Singh, who was the king of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir at that point of time, to exceed Pakistan. So this is what they were sure that they could achieve. Unfortunately, they underestimated the prowess of Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and also the strength of character of Maharaja Hari Singh. Sardar Patel was able to quickly integrate all the kings, even those who tried to act funny, like Nawabs of Hyderabad, Bhopal, etc. And Maharaja Hari Singh, on the other hand, decided to accede to India and not to Pakistan, in spite of huge pressure from Mountbatten. But for some reason, Nehruji was the biggest hindrance for Hari Singh to integrate J&K with India, because he wanted Maharaja to first hand over power to Sheikh Abdullah, calling him the most popular leader of Kashmir, even before the treaty was signed, which was actually contrary to what India Independence Act had passed as the law. And Sheikh Abdullah was no popular leader. I think just the previous year to that, I think it is in 1946 November and 1947 January, if I remember right. Sheikh Abdullah's National Conference had not won a single seat in Praja Sabha elections in Kashmir. And somehow, for the rest of India, Nehruji accepted the decision of King, while as for Kashmir, he wanted a plebiscite against the legal sanctity of the Indian Independence Act, which was passed in the British Parliament. I don't know, it's kind of surprising and shocking. But Hari Singh remained adamant of not agreeing to Nehruji's demand of transferring the power to Abdullah, and that caused a huge delay. Now, Pakistan at that point of time, clearly understood that it's a good time for them to attack and take away Kashmir. Probably, maybe it was under the advice of Mountbatten. So even when they attacked, Nehru did not relent. He first made sure that Maharaja Hari Singh, he kind of signs, and passes on the the power, whatever it called. So Maharaja Hari Singh actually in the accession treaty wrote that he's appointing Abdullah as the interim administrator, and then only the Indian forces came to Kashmir and started freeing the forced occupation of Kashmiri Pathans. The Pakistani Pathans and the army. Everybody was actually baffled by such rigidity and foolishness on Nehru's side. And because of this, it costed one of the most important parts of Kashmir territory, Gilgit, which Pakistan immediately took control of. And again, further, at the most convenient time for Pakistan, Nehruji was made by Mountbatten to go to United Nations and call for ceasefire. And that too happened without consulting our army. Because by then army was already winning back the most important territories. So with this another foolish decision, we lost a whole lot of territory to Pakistan, which we could not get back after that. Anyway, let's not talk about Nehruji's Himalayan blunders, because that's a huge topic in itself. So today, CPEC passes through this region, the Gilgit, Baltistan, and the area that we so easily gave up. Treachery in democratic India. I wrote it like that because it is important to note what happened in Kashmir, after we acceded to India and we became part of Republic of India. Article 37 was not there when the Treaty of Accession was signed. These were put in, few days before the Constitution of India was adopted in late 1949. Sheikh Abdullah had gone to Nehruji and asked him that since Kashmir was a Muslim majority state, there should be a special status. And I don't know for what reason, which Nehruji immediately agreed to and asked him to tell Dr. Ambedkar to insert in the Constitution. Because Dr. Ambedkar was the chairman of the drafting committee. But, when Sheikh Abdullah went and met Dr. Ambedkar, Dr. Ambedkar bluntly refused to add this into our constitution, saying that this will be a treachery to the future generations of India. But, as usual, Nehruji prevailed. and it got inserted. And I think some of these are already known how it was. Sardar Patel was against it, but anyway, because the Nehruji was prime minister and somehow he prevailed, and this was got inserted. And on the day actually it was inserted into the constitution, Dr. Ambedkar walked out of that session. So this resulted in the laws that were passed by our parliament not being applicable in Jammu and Kashmir. So even the local courts in Jammu and Kashmir behaved in a manner as if they were superior to the Supreme Court of India. Kashmiri Hindus, were treated as a majority, even when they were a micro minority in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So all the benefits of minority community were accrued to Muslims in spite of being a majority. Certain other laws, which were passed, which dispossessed Hindus of their inherited land holdings. So again, I think after decades of independence and the democratic India, the discrimination continued, and I think which finally resulted in the planned genocide and religious cleansing of Kashmiri Hindus in 1989-90. We as a community were uprooted from our ancestral homes overnight and made refugees in our own land. While the early genocides and forced exodus from Kashmir happened under the rule of invaders, the foreign occupation, under the Islamist conquerors, but whom will you blame the recent most genocide upon? When finally the integration of Kashmir happened with India, we actually believed that now we are safe. Nothing could alter our connection with our motherland because we are part of India, that is a democratic and a secular republic. But yet, the last and the final genocide was perpetrated on us, uprooting us from our own homeland, that we inhabited for eternity. I mean, aren't we signatories to the Charter of Human Rights in the United Nations? How did such a thing happen to us? Looks like India was more worried about the human rights of citizens of other countries than the human rights of its own citizens. I don't know. I mean, can you believe this happened in today's India under the watch of democratically elected government with over 10 lakh army and it's at its disposal to protect its citizens? So whom should we blame? Who should be ashamed of such a happening? I'll just tell you about a small incident, and with that I will close my talk. In 1993, there was an incident regarding Kashmir. A complaint was filed by Pakistan, which was supported by the Organization of Islamic Countries, OIC. It's a grouping of about 57 nations in the United Nations, saying that there were human rights atrocities happening in Kashmir. So Sri P.V. Narasimha was the Prime Minister of India at that point of time. To defend India's case, he formed a group under the leadership of Atal Bihari Vajpayee ji, who was the leader of opposition, along with I think Salman Khurshid was a minister in his cabinet. And there was this group called Panun Kashmir, which is the organization of Kashmiri Hindus. And this group was formed to represent India at the United Nations. So a presentation was given by India showing that if at all there has been any human right violation in Kashmir, it has been the genocide of Kashmiri Hindus. So after the presentation was done, Pakistan got up to say that this was an unfinished agenda of partition, because at the partition, the Muslim majority states should have come to Pakistan and Hindu majority states should have stayed with India. Luckily, along with the delegation, there was also a seasoned bureaucrat. His name was T.N. Koul. So he responded by saying that if this is an unfinished agenda of partition, then be ready to receive additional 15 crore Indian Muslims who stayed back in India at the time of partition. And then you can keep Kashmir too. I think, Iran was probably the leader of OIC at that point of time. Hearing this, Iran understood the issue and immediately withdrew the support. So after Iran, I think rest of the OIC members also withdrew the support, and hence the resolution was totally withdrawn. But the very next year, in 1994, the same Kashmiri Hindus went to the newly formed National Human Rights Commission under the chairmanship of Justice Venkatchalaya and said that 4 years have passed since we have been ethnically cleansed from our land. What is the action you or the government is initiating on this matter? So, as is the norm, Justice Venkatacharya went, he sent a notice to the government stating that we have received this petition and what does government have to say about it? Do you know the then government of India under the Prime Ministership of Sri P.V. Narasimha Rao ji gives in writing to NHRC, the National Human Rights Commission, and it says migration of Kashmiri Hindus from Kashmir Valley was self-induced. I mean, it's shocking. When we told the government that just a few minutes back in Geneva, you had said that if there has been a genocide and that's of Kashmiri Hindus were ethnically cleansed from their own homeland. So how do you reconcile these two statements? What you're saying now? The government said, please hush up. We are fighting a grim battle in Kashmir right now. So don't distract us. We are trying to do something for you. So keep quiet. We will help you and we'll be there for you. The same, anyway. So I don't know how have they been helping us. The people who on record have accepted to have committed murders, rapes, usurped our houses, our properties, desecrated our temples, wielded guns even on our young children, cut our women by saws after gang raping them. I mean, you're helping us by giving them protection? Even after self-confessions and innumerable eyewitnesses, these criminals were being told that they will withdraw the cases against them if they turn towards India. I mean, what are we? We appease criminals and harangue the victims? I don't know. Even Bangladesh's record is better than India's in bringing war criminals to justice in that sense. So, it brings to the point, who's responsible for stealing the identity of our children? Where will our children learn their cultural moorings? Where will they pick up the language from? How do they understand our customs? How do they know the significance of our heritage? Basically, they have been left identityless. When the roots are cut, the tree does not take a lot of time to die. After a couple of generations, we might still retain the name, like I have a Koul, but there will be no markers, to identify with our culture. There will be no identity with our great culture heritage that we had. So who's responsible for this? Nobody is even willing to accept any responsibility. And do you know that in last 30 years, not one murder, not one rape, not one property usurping, not one desecration, not one abduction has been prosecuted, sentenced, or even convicted. Not even as an exception. And this is what they mean by helping us. Not a single victim has got justice in the last 30 years. On the contrary, the same people have been, subsequent governments have been spending money on the same people for their security. I mean, I'm talking about these criminals, for their travels, for their health, and crores and crores of rupees have been spent on that. What is the compulsion? I kind of fail to understand. And probably this is what they call as our secularism. The abrogation of the Article 370-35 is a positive step right now in that has happened recently, last year, a little over a year. but we are miles away from actually serving justice to the victims. I think this is not just an assault on Kashmiri Pandits, but it's assault on the very roots of Indian civilization. Thank you. I think I will take if any questions are there. Thank you, Geeta ji.
Thank you, Mr. Vinod Koul, for this very novel talk, an eye opener in many aspects. And your ending and conclusion has really touched the listeners' hearts. The real problem which is being faced, we have come to know through your 1 hour's deliberation. In 1 hour, you took us on an online trip and showcase the beauty and antiquity of Kashmir and the present problem of the Pandits, right from 1,000 years of written history to its significance and the contribution to Indian history and cultural heritage. The civilizational conflicts due to its easy access being the gateway to Central Asia, of the valor of the brave Kotarani, the partition treachery in relation to the trade routes. So we knew very little about Kashmir, but your understanding of your home state has cleared many conceptions, many misconceptions, though today its present state is very sad. But what a virtual trip it was from Sharada Desha to Kashmir today over the centuries. Being into cultural heritage activities, I am very concerned when people are uprooted from their homes, losing their identity and a sense of belonging, and more so their language to communicate their pain. This you had very nicely summed up your entire talk, Mr. Paul. So probably a new vocabulary characterized by dispossession takes birth, I think, like the words like migrant, tent, relief, ration, which you never knew earlier, now seems to come into your vocabulary of your language. So what can be deduced from the talk is that the resilient pundits face the trauma of the violence and are rebuilding their lives as Vinod Koul himself is successfully doing elsewhere. Who do we blame in modern time? This statement of yours was very tugging, and you raised a valid question that there exists no practical policy or intent to build the Kashmiri Pandit homes. Then how can they return? Even after 30 years, the facts and the interpretations of those historical happenings relating to the Kashmiri Pandit exodus are still misrepresented and misconstrued. And still, the onus of proving the crime against them is on the Pandits themselves who faced ethnic religious cleansing. Thank you so much, Mr. Vinod Paul, for the new insight that we got, because this is not known to many of us, and there is one question asked by one of our viewers as to why it is not added in the textbooks. We'll come on to that later. So I would like to put a question as in 1980 we understand that Abdullah began the Islamization of Kashmir. His government changed the names of about 2,500 villages from their original names, and he gave them new Islamic names. Was that the start of the systematic eviction of the Pandits, which was later fanned by Governor Jagmohan in 1990 because he told them to flee away when 2.5 lakh Pandits fled in modern India? Will the Pandits, next, another question, will the Pandits return to the valley after their forced exile and after the abrogation of Article 370, which is an year old now?
So your first question, the Islamization of Kashmir, I think, like as I said, it started about 700 years back. We have to be, very cognizant about the doctrine of Islam to understand some of these fundamentals. So I wouldn't, want to talk largely about that. But yes, Sheikh Abdullah his whole goal was to kind of convert this whole area. Probably he wanted at one point of time to make it into an independent state which he could rule and control. So, and for that, the only thorn was the Kashmiri Pandits, because they wouldn't want. They would always be, be part of the Indian subcontinent, the Republic of India. So this did start, at that point of time, even in a democratically in a democratic republic like India, in that sense. But the other part which you said, Jagmohan fanning it further, that is a totally wrong. This kind of a narrative has been built in the last 5 to 7 years. In fact, Jagmohan is the one who ensured that this community still survives. Otherwise, if you look at what was happening in those intervening months before the final exodus happened in January 1990, there would have been no Kashmiri Hindu community left, because it was ethnically being cleansed very, very strategically and in a very well-planned manner. And I think thanks to Jagmohan, who alerted. In fact, we are talking today because I think just at the right moment, he kind of ensured that this, a small micro little population survives. Otherwise, it's extremely wrong. It's a narrative that is being built to somehow place the blame onto him rather than to the actual, Sheikh and Farooq Abdullah at that point. So sorry, I missed your second question.
I mean, after the abrogation of Article 370, what is the position now? 1 year later, what is the position of the Kashmiri Pandits there?
No, there is no. I mean, see, other than a small minuscule of about 30, 40 families who are working in some of the government departments and who have to work, nobody has gone back. You cannot go back. See, my house, it's not usable. In fact, it has been, people have usurped those places. There is nowhere to go. Where do you go? And what is the protection? Suppose we go now, what is the protection that government is promising, that we don't want to be sitting ducks that we have been about 30 years back again. So nothing has moved. That's what I said. If you look at it, there is no justice done as of now. I like I said, it's a good step. It's a first step to somehow make sure that the unbridled power, the corrupt politicians of Jammu and Kashmir wielded, and it was only for their good. Again, not for the general population. It wasn't. There was so much corruption. The corruption laws of India never applied in Kashmir because of Article 370. You couldn't. I mean, no Kashmiri politician could be persecuted because it was all used, under the garb of Article 370. So I don't see any movement as of now, and unless there a safe place is created and which is protected, and there is somehow a balance of what I would call population balance is maintained, it is not going to be easy to rehabilitate Kashmiris back in Kashmir.
So it is. Thank you so much. It is a very long process. If at all the Kashmiris are tempted to go back, maybe not in the very near future. It looks very bleak.
No, you see, to prevent something in the future, what you need to do is you have to show intent to persecute the people, the criminals who perpetrated this whole. If you're not doing that, there is no deterrence for the others to come and do the same thing again in future. So you cannot solve it by doing kind of an appeasement that is going on in India today. So in that sense, I hope the current government can do something concrete on those lines as well.
So all the best in that direction. I think Vidushi Usha Kumar from Bengaluru has very nicely put it up, saying that it was a very detailed explanation and quite interesting. There are many viewers who have more or less given their feedback on these lines. That is from Ram Divakar Buddupalli. How do we incorporate this into the, I mean, what all you spoke, into the curriculum books? Need of the hour to know about our own country. And I think this is more relevant because you're on the NAC board.
No, no, NAC was it was an I was asked to do a consulting assignment for them
Okay.
when they were doing the the university rankings. So that
Oh, okay. Okay.
yeah, but I am not on the academic curriculums. But yes, I think
Oh, okay.
people like you can take it up and I mean it's known. It's not something that is new, but the initiative has to be taken by the government to correct some of these things and ensure, because unless the true history of our civilization is told to our people, there is no pride. People don't know. I mean, that's why the whole there's so much ridicule happening within our own society of our own cultures without understanding from where they came and how they came. Till West tells us that these are scientific and they founded on solid scientific principles. Till then, I think we don't even see yoga is becoming popular because West is adopting it now. Otherwise, in India, it used to be only a few that would practice. So
No, unfortunately, Indian history has been written by the victors. That being the case, it is their side of view, how they wanted to write and interpret that we are still, which is still happening in today's 21st century. Until and unless we have our own historians, the Indian historians who understand things and able to write, till such time this situation will go, because the government is not interested in wanting to change the entire syllabus for the school. So I think, but a movement is going on. For example, you have Rajiv Malhotra, who is now on a massive project of bringing out Indian history in many volumes, and I think very reputed historians have been asked to come on board, and this is also supported by Subramaniam Iyer, I think. And there are also at a lower level, I know of two or three individuals who have formed a group, and they are trying to get the history, giving the work to the historians of particular regions. For example, the local history of Kerala, maybe certain regions which we wouldn't know. So, knowing the local history of the local communities. So, there is a movement going on, and all this will take time. It will not happen in a hurry. And least of all, we can't expect the government to bring about a change. So I hope Ram Divakar is satisfied with this answer. There is one from Arshali, my good friend from Lucknow, our India's youngest archaeologist. He says, "Heartiest thanks for such an enlightening talk. Kindly enumerate on the relationship between the Sultan of Kashmir, Zain ul Abidin, otherwise known as the Akbar of Kashmir, and the Kashmiri Brahmin community, and the status quo before and after."
no, I think he's only one particular king in the whole history of the Islamic rule who was quite benevolent. In fact, he promoted the by a lot of the Sanskrit culture, the Sanskrit scholarship at Aurangabad. He was only one of the people who kind of promoted the original scholarship. But his rule was not for so long to kind of have a lasting impression. But yes, Zainul Abidin is only one such kings among multitude of those that understood the heritage of Kashmir and kind of tried to preserve it to that extent. Yes.
And he asked here, what is the status quo before and after? Was that it was only during his time that there was some
Yes, yes,
religious integration? After that, it was not there. Again, it came
yes,
back
yes.
to
Again, it went back. Yes. In fact,
okay.
it got even worse after that because Pathans and all that came. So those were some of the worst times for the ancient heritage of Kashmiris.
So till Ranjit Singh and the Dogras
Yes,
came to power. So
yes.
he also again asked, kindly also elucidate on the whereabouts of the Sarvagyana Pitam at the Sharada temple, which was visited by Jagatguru Adi Shankaracharya.
This is currently in what is called Muzaffarnagar. It's in the POK area. I mean, it is destroyed. It is no more. I mean, the old Sharada, it used to be under. There's a beautiful Sharada stream from the lake that used to come, and it used to be on the banks of that. Only I think just the remnants, the ruins of it are left there. It is not in the current Kashmir that we have. It's just adjoining to us, which is now under POK.
As far as I know, there is a group which is now trying to bring back this Sharada Peetam, and the head of that organization recently visited about 2 to 3 months back in the POK area to see what is the position. They are also wanting to revive the Sharada Lipi, and bring about once again the glory of the Sharada Peetam. Work is going on, and I think
Yes,
they are very serious about it, and I think that their efforts might pay off in the next few years.
I hope to. Mhm.
Have you heard about this group?
Yes, yes. There is a group called Sharada Group itself
Yes,
that is promoting the language, and they're trying.
yes.
But it being in POK, I do not think you're going to get much done. But at least the language part, I think it is proceeding in a good way. The revival of Sharada Lipi, that is going on. Yeah, I'm aware of that.
I think it was during the second, fourth centuries that this lipi was very popular. And I think along with the Siddhi lipi, I think it went to China or something like that. I'm not very sure because Siddham lipi was what China took it, and then they wrote the Buddhist chronicles. So there is from Suchita Ullal, a very touching and a total eye opener. Then she also asked, because she is a Konkan, this thing, as a Saraswat Brahmin, I had so far only heard from elders about our origins. So I think your talk has now reaffirmed that their ancestors were migrated from Kashmir. Just a minute. Then there is from Dr. VVNS Murthy Jayanti from Vishakhapatnam. It's a very informative talk, needs a lot of patience to compile as well as listen, but it is a story of a sacred part of a nation put to lots of distress and turmoil. We hope that in the years to come, Jammu and Kashmir's past glory will be restored. So then there is from Subhash Ganju, must be somebody known to you, Mr. Vinod.
Yes.
Explanation by Vinod on Jagmohan's hand in making Kashmiri Hindu flee in 1990 is absolutely true. So he reiterates. Then from Ukem Satyanarayana Murthy from Hyderabad, Jammu and Kashmir is historically significant and a nice place to visit on a heritage tour, having beautiful palaces, forts, and ancient temples, mosques, beautiful gardens, etc. Now he asks a question: how is JNK distinct from the rest of the country culturally?
Actually, it is not. I mean, like as I said, my whole presentation was to establish that it is all part of the same Indic civilization. So, I mean, it depends. Now, if you say that if you take the culture of invaders, then yes, it will be a little different in the sense from the Indic civilization. But actually, it is not. Like as I said, Panini's grammar, which is used all across the country, Varanasi, or whether it is in Sharda Mathas in South, it is the same. I don't think culturally we're, yes, other than if you look at, not culturally, I would say philosophically, Kashmiri Pandits follow a stream of I wouldn't, it's a slightly off Vedanta, but it's called Kashmir Shaivism, which is a little different, but it also is based on Advaitic philosophy itself. So in that sense, it's not very different.
How is Amar Mahal Palace in J&K a historically significant attraction? Looks like he has visited Jammu and Kashmir, so he's asking this particular question.
Yeah, it was one of the palaces. Maharaja Amar Singh used to use uh, one of the Dogra kings of Kashmir, Jammu and Kashmir. So, I mean, the significance is that it is a palace that was used by one of the kings of Kashmir as well, Jammu and Kashmir.
Is it still there now?
Yes,
It is maintained as a palace.
yes.
Then he
No,
asked
I mean,
another.
right now, immediately, I don't know. They might be converted into hotels or some heritage.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be. I think there is the one in Jammu is converted into a hotel. So
Yeah, rather than falling apart, I think this
yes,
is one way of keeping the heritage alive, and
true,
also maintaining a heritage building is very expensive. So this is one way of
keeping it,
recycling, keeping it
true.
alive. So, how is the valley known for Hindu Buddhist culture, which was influenced by Islamic domination?
How is
How is the
the
valley known for its Hindu and Buddhist culture,
hmm.
influenced by Islamic domination?
So Islamic domination happened only, like as I said, in 1300 and 50. If you say, uh, till then it was always Hindu and Buddhist culture that thrived in Kashmir. So the decline, in fact, the decline started of Hindu and the Buddhist culture. The decline started around 1300s, mid 1300s, and slowly, over a period of time, it weaned almost to when 30 years back, nothing now. In the Kashmir Valley, no, I wouldn't say the same about Jammu. Jammu still, because from Kashmir, most of our people migrated to Jammu, and Jammu was always Hindu, majority area in that sense.
So, from Arshali, our hearty hope that Kashmir be repopulated with the enlightened Pandits like Kalhana, and again make Kashmir shine with their intellectual contributions as in the past. So, let's hope that the past glory will be.
I'm wondering whether my daughter will be able to speak Kashmiri fluently in few years down the line. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. The identity is lost. It's not something that you can build. What was built in Kashmir was built for thousands of years, and I hope someday.
She will only have inheritance of loss. That's all, Mr. Vinod.
I
But
know.
she will understand the Kannada language and its rich history on the flip side.
No, no,
Then,
absolutely. I mean, she speaks much fluenter Kannada than Kashmiri in that sense. Yes,
yes, it's the inheritance of loss. It's what happens when populations are displaced, migration happens, and there is no continuity with your past. So you go ahead with whichever region you are, I mean, who are taking care of you, and you become a part of that, and that is how dilution of heritage takes place. It is lost.
absolutely.
Like how we have lost about nearly 1,000 and odd dialects.
See, here only one thing I kind of differ. I agree totally that um, ours was not a migration. We didn't migrate for the reason of opportunities, or for our jobs or any such thing. It was a forced exodus on us. So the problem is that the roots, the culture that we had as a community. Uh, like as I said, there's so many different festivals that we have. Shivratri is a very important, and there's a way of actually celebrating that which we follow. So all that is, in generation or two, it will be all gone.
Yes,
I
yes.
Because there is nowhere that I can send my child where you can reconnect now. There's nowhere. So right now, I am in Bangalore. My cousins, the whole community is all around the world. So in that sense, you are, like as I said, roots are lost. And other than
Yes.
that, I'm very, very, I love the history of Karnataka. In fact, Bilhana. I don't know. You spoke about Bilhana. Bilhana was a Kashmiri who actually came and settled in Karnataka.
Yes,
He was
yes,
he was the in the court of Vikramaditya VI in West Chalukya Kingdom, 12th century. So in that sense, that has always happened. Migration, but those were for a different reason. But the roots from where it came, it's all lost. That's what I'm meant by saying this.
so Anupama Ravindra Singh says, "Thank you, Vinodji, for the true and original story of the Kashmir. Wishing it blooms to its beautiful state for the future generations to enjoy and respect Sharada Desha." It's a far-fetched,
Thank
but
you.
let us hope. Then from Professor Nirmala Rao, who says, very interesting, informative, and excellent talk. The speaker superbly enumerated the history and highlighted the present situation of Jammu and Kashmir. Hats off to the speaker for his superb explanation. I thought it was only Kashmir, not Jammu. But anyway, then from Ram Divakar, who says, we need to build a narrative around India, for India, and about India. So There is one thing from Anupama saying that any books written by you, Vinodji.
Not yet. Hopefully,
I think
sometime.
I think you should really give it a thought and write a book on the history and cultural heritage of Jammu Kashmir. There is
Sure.
from Dr. Sanjeev Kumar Singh from Delhi. We, as an archaeologist, worked in Kashmir, camping at Naranag. At
Naraga,
one,
Naga.
Naranag. At one time, it was a great Shaivat center. Would you please focus on it? So, anything that you would like to say now? What is the position?
Actually, if you go through Raj Tarangani, it says that there is not an inch of land of Kashmir which has sacred significance. So there is this Nara Nag. In fact, what they call Varamula today used to be Varahamula. It is the place from which the Satisar, the original lake, was drained. So every small place in this place has significance. Either there is a Devi or there is a sacred Nara. Nag means basically a spring. And it's the spring that was dedicated to the Lord Narayana. So there are so many legends around Kashmir that talk about how different deities are connected. In fact, I don't know whether you know that Kashmir is the only place which has the tantra which is dedicated to Vishnu. Normally, in most of the places, you will only have Shiva, Shiva who's connected to the tantra. But in Kashmir, we also have a samuday, which was, which had created this tantra philosophy around Vishnu as well. So Naranag is one of such places associated with some of these.
So from Dr. VVSN Murthy Jayanti, thank you, Dr. Geeta and Destination Heritage for providing us good insight into the problems of Kashmir, past and present. Thanks to Sri Vinod Koul for his scholarly presentation. And one last final thing from Mr. Vijay Kumar from Vijayanagaram. Hope the abrogation of Article 370 is a bold step in the right direction in correcting this historical blunder, especially post 1947. So thank you, Vinodji. And on that note, we call it
Thank you.
Shivaratri. And I think there is one more comment which has come now from Dr. Nagara Sharma. Kalhana's Raja Tarangini and Bilhana's Vinka Manka Deva Charitra are to be remembered to recollect Karnataka and Kashmiri relations. Baramulla, which was Varahamullah, and Anantnag are two rich cultural faces. Thank you for a scholarly presentation. Thank you, Dr. Nagara Sharma, for always giving a addenda or an addition to what the speaker has spoke. It was indeed really very enlightening, and we feel also proud to have this link with Kashmir. So thank you so much,
Thank you.
viewers. And thank you so much, Mr. Vinod Koul. And we will meet again next Saturday when we have a very interesting talk on the traditional art and the painting of Mysore. It is going to be a very interesting and a scholarly deliberation by Dr. Nagara Sharma. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much.